How does a poor boy with no schooling end up creating one of Japan's most iconic car companies? Not in Tokyo, not with money, but with fire, betrayal, and the will to build. This is the untold story of Jujiro Matsuda, the fisherman's son who gave the world Mazda. Section 1. From Cork to cars. How did Mazda begin here? Why would a global car company start with Cork? It sounds impossible, even ridiculous. But that's exactly how Mazda began. Not in a factory filled with engines, but in a quiet town in Hiroshima, shaping bottle stoppers made of cork. In 1920, the company wasn't called Mazda. It was named Toyo Cork Kogyo, or Oriental Cork Industries. Their business? Making cork products, mostly for sealing glass bottles. No cars, no steel, just cork. So why Cork? The real story begins with a small shop in Hiroshima, run by a struggling merchant named Kiyotani. His business was failing. Debts piled up. Eventually, the local bank stepped in and decided to turn the shop into a corporation. That's when they brought in one man to help rebuild it, Jujiro Matsuda. But wait, why him? Because Jujiro wasn't just any businessman. He was already known across Japan as a genius in engineering and production. He had turned rusted machines into working systems and made a fortune selling patented pumps. So when the cork business needed help, the bankers didn't look to someone with money. They looked for someone with grit, and they found him. At age 45, Matsuda joined the company as a silent partner. 1 year later, in 1921, he officially became president. And from that moment on, the future of Mazda began to shift. So again, why would a car company start with Cork? Because sometimes, the road to greatness doesn't start with power. It starts with failure. And a man crazy enough to believe that Cork could lead to something far greater. Section 2. Who was Jujiro Matsuda, Japan's modern Hideyoshi? Can a poor fisherman's son really become the leader of a global company? In Japan, there's a word for people like that: ima teiko. It means the modern Hideyoshi, a person who rises from nothing to everything. Jujiro Matsuda was born in 1875, in a poor village in Hiroshima. He was the 12th child in a family of fishermen. His father died when he was young. He never went to school. He learned to read and write from a friend's older brother. He was wild, stubborn, always fighting. But there was one thing he loved more than anything: tools. He dreamed of fire, hammers, and metal. He dreamed of being a blacksmith. At age 13, he left his village for Osaka. No money, no family, just a boy chasing sparks. He started as a blacksmith's apprentice. Then he moved from one factory to another, learning, failing, learning again. He taught himself how to use machines, how to build, how to fix. By age 18, he was working at the Kure Naval Arsenal, then Osaka Arsenal, then Mitsubishi shipyards in Nagasaki. By 21, he had worked at Japan's largest military factories. Not as a soldier but as a builder. For more than a decade, he moved between shipyards, weapon factories, and metal workshops. Each job taught him something new. Each failure made him sharper. And each spark brought him closer to his dream. He didn't have money. He didn't have degrees. But he had something far stronger: craftsmanship. And in Japan, especially then, a man with skills could still rewrite his destiny. Jujiro Matsuda didn't just build machines. He built himself from the ashes of poverty. And that's why they called him the modern Hideyoshi. Section 3. A boy with no schooling but a gift for machines. How far can someone go with no education at all? In most countries, no school means no future. But in Meiji-era Japan, a boy with talent and fire could still find his way. Jujiro Matsuda never sat in a classroom. He never wore a uniform, never took exams. But he had something else: his hands. And in them lived a kind of genius. He started by fixing broken tools. Then he watched how metal bent, how it changed color with heat, how machines breathed when built right. He wasn't reading textbooks. He was reading the rhythm of iron. By the time he was 15, he could already forge, polish, and weld better than most adults. He knew how to work a lathe. He knew the heartbeat of machines. At 18, he was offered a job by the Navy's shipyard in Cork. That was no ordinary job. It meant one thing. Japan's military trusted this teenager more than men twice his age. But he didn't stop there. He moved to Osaka Arsenal, then Mitsubishi's shipyards in Nagasaki, then the Navy's factory in Sasebo. Each move, a promotion. Each transfer, a test. And each time he passed. By 30, he had worked in the best factories in the country. But he wasn't satisfied, because working for someone else wasn't enough. He wanted to build something of his own, with his name on it, with his soul in it. And so, with nothing but tools and ambition, Jujiro Matsuda set out on his own. He didn't have a degree, but he had what no paper could prove: a gift. Section 4: Factory to Factory Learning from the Military Machine. What does war teach a craftsman? In peace, you build to last. But in war you build to survive. Jujiro Matsuda spent over a decade moving from factory to factory. Not just any factories, but the heart of Japan's military industry. At the Cork Naval Arsenal, he saw how ships were born massive, precise, unstoppable. At the Osaka Arsenal, he learned how every screw and rivet could mean life or death. In Nagasaki, at Mitsubishi shipyards, he witnessed the power of industrial scale. And in Sasebo, he saw how discipline turned raw materials into machines of war. But Matsuda wasn't there to fight. He was there to learn. He asked questions. He studied each machine like it had a soul. He watched how teams worked, and how mistakes were not allowed. He wasn't a soldier, but he was training like one. His battlefield was the factory floor. Day after day, he improved. He learned how to manage teams, how to read blueprints, how to fix machines no one else could fix. He never said much, but he remembered everything. He took the military's obsession with precision and turned it into his personal code. In a world of chaos, he found order. In a world of war, he found mastery. By the time he turned 30, he didn't just know how to build. He knew how to lead. And that's when something inside him changed. He had seen enough, learned enough. It was time to stop working for someone else. It was time to take all that knowledge and build something of his own. Not for war, but for the future. Section 5: His first invention and first betrayal. What hurts more than failure? Success followed by betrayal. At age 31, Jujiro Matsuda took his first step into independence. He opened a small workshop in Osaka. No investors, no guarantees, just tools and dreams. He began repairing water meters. Then, he saw a flaw in the pumps people used every day. They were hard to fix. So, he redesigned them from the inside out. What came next changed everything. He patented his invention, the Matsuda-style pump. It was easier to repair, more efficient, and soon in high demand. Orders flooded in. For the first time, Matsuda wasn't just a technician, he was a businessman. He formed a company, hired workers, became known as a rising star in Japan's industrial world. But success is dangerous, and people close to you can hurt the most. One of his trusted employees betrayed him, accused Matsuda of embezzlement. The police arrested him. He spent 49 days in detention. The scandal shocked Osaka. It didn't matter that he was innocent. His name was already damaged. And just when things couldn't get worse, another betrayal. A separate group tried to take over his company. The company he had built with his own hands. That was enough. Matsuda walked away. From the business, from the success, from everything. But not from his craft. He started again. A new workshop, a new team, new inventions. In 1912, he helped design a massive fountain for an Osaka amusement park. Then, a cable car. His reputation slowly returned, not through words, but through work. He had lost everything, but he didn't lose himself. And sometimes, that's all you need to begin again. Section 6: Big War. Big orders, a fortune forged in fire. Would your country ever let a man with no degree build weapons for war? In Japan back then, skill meant more than status. And Jujiro Matsuda had both in his hands. In 1915, World War I was raging across Europe, and Japan, an ally of Britain, was supplying the war effort. That year, Matsuda received a shocking order: 4 million bomb fuses from Russia. Yes, 4 million. To fulfill it, he created a new company, Matsuda Manufacturing Co. He bought 5,000 tsubo, about 16,000 square meters of land behind Osaka's Umeda Station, built a massive factory, hired 4,000 workers. Think about that. A man with no formal education leading 4,000 people, designing, producing, and delivering weapons of war. And he did it. All 4 million units were delivered within a year. The profit? Unbelievable. In today's money, hundreds of millions of dollars. Overnight, Matsuda became a legend. They called him the modern Hideyoshi, not just for rising from poverty, but for leading Japan's industry through the fire of war. But war is not just about victory. It creates power struggles, and even success can become a threat. Some in his company feared his growing influence. When he suggested moving the factory to Hiroshima, they resisted. They feared losing control. Once again, betrayal. Matsuda, frustrated and disillusioned, resigned from the very empire he had built. At 42, he returned to his hometown. No factory, no fortune, just experience and scars. But if there's one thing he had learned, it was this: you can lose your money, you can lose your company, but if you never lose your hands, your skill, you will never be truly defeated. Section 7: Power Struggles and a Return to his hometown. What do you do when your own people push you out? When the empire you built turns its back on you? Jujiro Matsuda had created jobs for thousands. He had delivered results no one thought possible, and yet was seen as a threat. Too powerful, too independent. When he proposed moving the factory to his hometown of Hiroshima, some board members panicked. They feared they'd lose control. They plotted, whispered, delayed the plan. Once again, Matsuda faced betrayal, not from strangers, but from men he had trusted. So, he stepped down. Not in anger, not in shame, but in quiet determination. He returned to Hiroshima with no title and no company. But he had something more valuable: a name. In Osaka, he had been called a god of money. In Hiroshima, he was seen as a living legend. Business leaders welcomed him. They lined up with offers asking him to join, advise, invest. At one point, Matsuda was involved in over 20 companies at the same time. But something had changed. He had tasted power, and it left a bitter aftertaste. He was no longer building machines. He was chasing numbers, chasing profit, and slowly, he began to feel empty. Then came the crash. The stock market fell, fortunes evaporated, and Matsuda, who had made millions, lost more than just money. He lost focus. He lost direction. And that's when it hit him. He didn't start with stocks. He didn't start with factories. He started with fire, iron, and hands. He realized he had wandered too far from what made him great. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to go back. Section 8: From Riches to Ruin. The stock market crash that changed everything. How fast can fortune disappear? In Matsuda's case, almost overnight. In the years after his resignation, he shifted focus. Less metal, more money. He became a silent investor, buying stocks, trading assets, trying to multiply wealth without touching tools. At the time, Japan was riding a post-war boom. Stock prices soared. It felt like money could only go up. And Matsuda, once the builder of machines, became a builder of portfolios. Then came March 15, 1920. The crash. Stocks plummeted. The boom ended, and panic spread. In a matter of days, Matsuda lost almost everything. Not just his profit, his pride. He had built his reputation through sweat and steel. Now, he had chased numbers and been burned. But this moment, this collapse, did something strange to him. It didn't break him. It woke him up. He looked at his empty accounts, then down at his hands. The same hands that had built ships, tools, engines. And he smiled, because even if the money was gone, his hands still worked, his brain still worked, and deep inside something else returned. Hunger. The kind of hunger you can't buy. The hunger to build, to shape something from nothing, to make fire, again. And that's when fate knocked. In 1921, the struggling Toyo Cork Kogyo needed help. A failing cork business on the edge of collapse. They didn't need a banker. They didn't need a salesman. They needed a builder. And Jujiro Matsuda was ready. Section 9 Mazda is born, cork transformed into steel. Can greatness be built from cork? That's how Mazda began. Not in a factory of engines but in a dying cork company, on the edge of bankruptcy. In 1921, Jujiro Matsuda officially became president of Toyo Cork Kogyo. The company was barely surviving. No vision, no future. But Matsuda brought something no one else could. Conviction. He didn't just want to fix the company. He wanted to transform it. From soft cork to hard steel. He began investing in research. Not just into cork but into machines. Into gears, tools, prototypes. He hired young engineers. Built new teams. And slowly shifted the company's focus from sealing bottles to building parts. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't fast. But it was focused. Then, in 1927, something changed. The company changed its name Toyo Kogyo Co., Limited. The word cork disappeared, and in its place a new identity. But Matsuda still wanted more. He wasn't interested in just parts. He wanted motion. He wanted machines that could move on their own. And so, in 1931, it happened. The first Mazda Go was born, a three-wheeled truck. Small, efficient, tough. And the name? It wasn't chosen at random. Mazda was a play on Matsuda's own name. And also a nod to Ahura Mazda, the god of wisdom and harmony. A machine with a soul. And so, the world didn't just get a new vehicle. It got a symbol of rebirth, of resilience. Mazda wasn't born from profit. It was born from failure. And built by a man who refused to give up. Section 10 A legacy beyond the bomb, how Matsuda helped rebuild Hiroshima. What kind of legacy survives when a city is destroyed by an atomic bomb? On August 6, 1945, Jujiro Matsuda turned 70. That morning, Hiroshima disappeared in fire. But Matsuda survived. His home was far from the blast. His company Toyo Kogyo was located 5 kilometers from the epicenter. It was damaged but not destroyed. In the days after the bombing, Hiroshima was silent. No electricity. No government, no direction. And so, Matsuda opened the gates to his factory. He gave the land to the prefecture. The Hiroshima government moved its offices inside. NHK broadcast from Toyo Kogyo's grounds. The city's recovery began from his soil. He didn't make speeches. He didn't seek headlines. He just opened his doors. As Japan transitioned from empire to ashes, Matsuda helped turn despair into function. Weapons gave way to trucks. Factories returned to life. He wasn't purged by the American occupation. Why? Because even they saw this man built, he didn't destroy. In 1950, when Hiroshima's baseball team the Carp was founded, Toyo Kogyo became one of its first supporters. Because for Matsuda, rebuilding meant more than machines. It meant giving people something to believe in. A reason to cheer. A reason to gather. A reason to hope. In 1951, he handed over leadership to his son. And in 1952, he passed away peacefully in Hiroshima, the city he helped rebuild. Jujiro Matsuda didn't just leave behind a car company. He left a spirit, a belief that even from the worst ruins, we can build again. Because sometimes, the greatest machines aren't made of steel, they're made of will. Cultural habits like this may seem small, but they reflect big ideas. How does your culture compare? Let's share and learn from each other. Leave a comment if you'd like. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.